So first thing, thank you to everyone who watched my Catfight video, my introduction to Catfight. This is a new format that I've created. I've been getting tons of views, tons of comments, tons of likes, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the discourse in the comments, people talking to me about what they like, what they don't like, some feedback, some ideas that they have. I also love all the deck lists that people are showing. I'm seeing a lot of people are really wanting to go big mana, which I think is awesome. So I'm seeing a lot of decks running around with this card, Doomsday Confluence. I think this is an awesome strategy. So see what you could do with this. I haven't found a big mana deck that's super oppressive yet. It's definitely good, but it's definitely not like the absolute thing to do. It's not the broken thing in the format to do, but it's good. So keep building and brewing, keep sending me those deck lists. I want to see it. And I want to hear you guys playing with your playgroups, and I want to hear what's working, what's not working, what you think is good, what you think is bad, etc., etc. But what I want to do today is I want to build a deck for this format from the ground up. So in case you haven't seen that video, let's talk about the format real fast. So it's a 1v1 format, and each player is going to start with a 9 lives familiar on the battlefield with 8 revival counters on it. You're going to have a library of 40 cards. It's going to be a singleton library. Every spell in your deck is going to be a 1 mana value non-creature card. So it's only non-creature cards. So you can't run Dryad Arbor in case I mentioned that previously. So it's going to be lands and 1 mana value spells. Both players are going to start at 9 lives. The game's going to go pretty quick. And with this deck, it's going to go really quick because we're going to go aggro here. So this is kind of the idea. There's also a bunch of effects that you can't do to the cat. The cat is immune to certain effects, and that is it can't be exiled, it can't be bounced, it can't be tucked, it can't lose all of its abilities. Basically things that you're going to want to do to make it so the cat won't be able to go to the graveyard and come back. You can't stifle that effect. Just don't work. The cat does not have it. They will not have an effect on the cat. So the cat's going to want to be there. It's going to want to attack or block, hit the graveyard, and come back. So that's the crux of the format here. So what I want to do is I want to build a deck from scratch. I want to show you what the process is to build a deck. Now, I've been playing with a play group, and we've had a handful of decks that we've been playing and trying. And recently, my son, who is in 5th grade, has seen us playing, and he wanted me to build him a deck. And what he asked for is he wanted something fast, and he wanted it to be red and green. And I'm like, that's perfect because those are the fast colors. So let's go ahead and do this. So first things we're going to add to this deck is we're going to add the combo that I always tell everyone when they mention what they want to do in this format. I immediately tell them, you have to think about this. You have to think about turn 1, I'm going to put a Rancor on my 9 lives familiar, and turn 2, I'm going to attack and scale up. Because that's game. These are the things you got to think about, is that this exists, that you are kind of up against the wall from turn 1. So whatever strategy you're doing, you can do it, but you need to be able to deal with the creature attacking you on the first couple turns, or your opponent trying to do things to make the cat more powerful that you need to be able to stop. So of course the other card that we're not going to run is Mental Misstep. I talk about this in the video, but this is the quintessential card in the format. Everyone runs Mental Misstep. You have to run it. It's ubiquitous. It truly is, because this is the way that you can counter any spell, and this is super important. So every deck is going to run this, including this deck, which can, at this moment in time, as you are seeing the title here, can't generate blue mana, but we're going to fix that. But either way, you're going to pay the 2 life, because I would rather pay 2 life to counter a scale up than get hit with a 6/4 creature. So that's the MacGuffin here. Everyone's going to be running Mental Misstep. All right, let's keep going with this idea here. We're playing Rancor, so that means we have to play bad Rancor, and that is, of course, Audacity. So Audacity is the same thing, except it doesn't come back to your hand. Obviously, things that we can attach to the cat that are going to make it bigger permanently are going to be better than one-shot things. One-shot things are going to be a great trick, and with 9 life, just a couple one-shot things win the game. But things that attach permanently are going to be even better. So sticking along those lines, you may not know this one, but this has been the power crept version of this effect. Inventor's Axe. It started with I think it was Dueling Rapier, and then we had Mirren Banesplitter, but the 1 mana red enchantment that gives +2/+0 and attaches automatically and can be played at flash speed. This is the best version of it, because you get 2 energy, and then you use that 2 energy that you can equip later. So you basically can use this twice is what it is. So this is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to run Inventor's Axe here. So we're adding some things here that are going to be able to permanently attach to our cat. But we want other stuff than that. We're also going to want to run effects that are going to be able to pump the cat as one-time shots. And we can kind of look that up real fast. Let's take a quick look here. So, and here's kind of a way that you can approach this. So we've built a strategy. Our goal is to end the game as quickly as possible. We're basically playing the mono red aggro of this format. It just happens to be red green because we have the better effects in red green. And we'll fix our mana so we won't have to worry so much about like hitting the proper land drops. I'll show you that in a second. But let's go into this. So we want to have things that are trample that are not a creature. Not a creature once. These are our searches. Obviously, you could play any color, but we're going to try to stick in red green because we want to do that. So we already have Audacity where, oh, Berserk. I can't believe we forgot to mention that one from the get-go. You probably were already screaming at me like, where's Berserk? Of course, Berserk. Berserk is another staple. If you're playing green, you're playing Berserk. It doubles the creature's power, and then it gives it trample, and then it sacrifices. But that's irrelevant, because when the cat gets sacrificed, it's just going to come back. So this is a great card. So we're going to play this. Barge in, +2/+2, and trample for non-humans. Well, guess what? A cat is not a human. Despite the fact that your pet cat might think at home, a cat is not a human. So we're going to run Barge in, which is going to be amazing. These we don't really want. We don't really care about cantrips in here. Dreadmaw's Ire, this is fantastic because, as you see, we're already playing some artifacts, and a lot of decks are going to play a lot of artifacts, particularly things like Skull Clamp, so we need a way to deal with that. So Dreadmaw's Ire is a great way to deal with this. You're basically getting 2 cards for the price of 1, so Dreadmaw's Ire. This is a fantastic one. Normally, I can have these 2 windows open together and I can just drag the cards and drop them directly in there, but I can't do that this time because if I do that, it breaks my screen recording software, so I need to do it this way. But if I was doing this on my own, I'd just have these 2 windows open separately and drag them and drop them in, but that's okay because we're kind of talking about the cards. Massive Might, +2/+2 and trample. Sounds good to me. Let's add that in there. Massive Might. Because this is what we want. We want to stick to this strategy. We don't want to veer too far from this strategy. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this not be a singleton deck. So by having a lot of repeat effects, the deck is going to play very consistently, and we're not going to be dealing with as much randomness. Now, there are some things that are going to like inevitably be random, and we're going to want to be random in tutors and such like that. But at this point, all we want to do is kind of get our goal. So anything that's making our creature bigger and giving it trample is kind of an auto include for what we're trying to do here. Let's see what else we got here. Rancor, we're running Rouse the Mob, +2/+0 and trample. I mean, it's not as good as +2/+2 and trample, but it's still a one-time shot. Rush of Adrenaline is obviously the better one. So let's run Rush of Adrenaline for certain. That extra 1 toughness might be good enough to do it. We actually don't want to run Shadow Spear in this deck because we're trying to go faster than Shadow Spear. So despite the fact that I always say that it's kind of a staple of the format, in this deck we're actually not going to run it. Rouse the Mob we're going to think about and come back to. Let's see what else we got here. +1/+1 and trample. Here's a good example. Vitality Charm. This is going to be +1/+1 and trample, which is great, but you can also use it to make an insect. Making tokens is fantastic. So let's add this in here, because in a weird way, if we have multiple creatures, then we're kind of giving ourselves a creature that's unblockable, because our opponent will have 1 creature to block with. They may not have 2. So by creating a token, we'll have a second one. But most of the time, we're probably going to want to use this just to give our creature trample. So, but the options is what we're looking for here. Wild Shape is another great example. It doesn't create a token, but this gives us options. So we can use this to protect our creature by turning it into the 1/3 with hexproof, or we can use this to make it the elephant with trample, which is amazing. This is actually very fantastic in this format. So let's add Wild Shape in there. Wild Shape. Let's go ahead and add Rouse the Mob. We're going with this effect. We're leaning in. Let's lean in super heavy. Okay, speaking of tokens, anything that can kind of generate extra tokens is going to be great. Anything that can generate tokens and stick within our strategy is even better. So take a look at this one. Turn Inside Out. This is the one, you've probably seen this one if you played any standard recently. This is the card that gives the creature +3/+0. And then if it dies, you manifest Dread. So if it dies, you're able to get yourself an extra creature. Absolutely fantastic. One card that didn't come up in our search there, just because the way it's worded. So let's get this in here. Monstrous Rage. Speaking of playing standard, This is obviously going to give our creature trample because it's going to give us a monster roll token. So this is +3/+2 and trample. This is actually one of the best abilities for what we're specifically looking to do. So that seems amazing. So turn inside out. It's going to be great. There's another one. Current land standard. Yeah, I'm like, we could be searching directly from there, but that's okay. I like to see the card images. We're going to add Felonious Rage, which is kind of the same thing, where it makes the creature bigger, and then if it dies, you're going to get yourself a 2/2 detective. So that's another way that we're going to be able to get a couple extra creatures, possibly, if our opponents are able to put up blocks or start destroying. And then we're going to be able to use those creatures to kind of like navigate around them. Now, speaking of ways to like navigate around our opponents, one of the best things you can do, and this is one of the things that when I talk to people about this format, and I say like some of the best cards in this format are kind of draft chaff, this is one of the best cards in the format. You're not going to believe me when I say this, but once you play with this, you're going to see why this is one of the best cards in the format. Turn 1, you play Sticky Fingers. So your creature now has Menace, so it can guarantee attack, like it can guarantee deal damage. You attack with it, it deals damage, you get a treasure. So your opponent is now down a life, and you still have mana available to be able to interact with them. That is really fantastic. That is really fantastic. And then you're going to be able to keep getting mana every single turn. Similarly, we're going to run... Similarly, in a slightly different way, we're going to run Convenient Target. This pumps the creature, and it's going to also give it Menace. It suspects it so it can't block, but it has Menace so it can attack, which is completely fantastic. So same idea here. Now, we're going to then split the difference here, and we're going to run Curse of Opulence. So this is kind of the same idea. We're getting the half benefit of Sticky Fingers in the sense that we're going to get the mana here. So we're getting like weird combinations of the same effect here. So Curse of Opulence, turn 1, you enchant your opponent with this. You attack them, you get yourself a gold. A gold obviously is basically the same thing as a treasure. So you can use that to play whatever you want or interact however you please. Note now that we have ways to play our Mental Misstep and not have to take that 2 life. So that's pretty fantastic. I don't think we're generating enough mana to try to dare like verge into a 3rd color, but we're to have that sometimes to be able to play the Mental Misstep is something that is actually slightly relevant. So, all right. So I have some kind of like permanent ways to give our creature trample or evasion so we're able to get in there. So let's switch over and talk about lands, because right now we have 20 cards, but we have no lands in the deck. My rule of thumb is 13 lands. You might want to run 14 depending on if you're using a lot of utility lands. If you're doing big mana stuff, you might want to go to 15 or 16. We're going super aggro. I wonder if we can get away with 12 lands. Let's see what lands we are going to add in, and then let's kind of go from there. Now, here's the thing that you're going to notice. Every single spell obviously costs a colored mana pip, ironically, other than the ones that are like weirdly free. So we are going to need to have lands that can generate both manas. Speaking of things that are weirdly free, I can't believe we forgot this one. I thought I added it in there, but apologies, I must have forgotten. Mutagenic Growth. This is fantastic. +2/+2. And then you can obviously pay the Phyrexian mana, so this is really good. And we have the mana that we could play this, so that's a great include. So lands we want. We want lands to get tapped for both colors that are going to come into play untapped. So the obvious one is going to be Copperline Gorge. Because when you're playing so few lands and the games are quick, this is pretty much always going to come in, like it'll never come into play tapped. So that's super fantastic. We want to run the Pain Land. You know, it's not ideal to be taking damage, but we're going to want to run it. We're going to run the Shockland. So that gives us Stomping Ground there. So we're getting ourselves some lands. Note every land we're adding is going to be able to tap for both colors here. Another land, check this one out. Kudos to the person who pointed this out to me in the YouTube comments. But these lands, this cycle of land, this is from Duskmourn. These are the commons. These are the lands that come to play untapped as long as a player has 13 or less life. Both players have 13 or less life from the get-go. This is actually one of the best lands you could play. This is up there with Copperline Verge. Honestly, this is better because there's no situation where this is ever going to come into play tapped unless you're both playing life gain. I guess if you're playing some crazy life gain deck and you happen to be against someone who's playing a crazy life gain deck, your land won't come into play, but 9 out of 10 matches, this is coming to play untapped guaranteed. So these are fantastic in this format. Note, if you haven't watched the original video, there are some cards on the ban list, and some of those cards on the ban list are the original dual lands, so we can't run a taiga. So no taiga in here. So we're not going to run a taiga, and we're not going to run fetch lands to get ourselves a taiga. You have to work for your mana a little bit harder here. Here's another good one. Gemstone Mine. Since we're going so fast, I feel totally safe running Gemstone Mine because we're never going to use those 3 counters. And if we do, we'll hit another land drop and we'll be totally fine. So Gemstone Mine, we're going to run in here. Here's a unique one to this format that I really like. Thoran Quarry. This is the land that taps for any color, but if at the end of turn you don't control a creature, you sacrifice it. Well, with the way 9 Lives Familiar is worded, is that it will come back and then you have the Thoran Quarry check at that point, and it'll notice that you have a creature, and the intervening if clause will cause this to not get sacrificed. So as long as your cat had counters on it, you will not lose your Thoran Quarry. So this is actually one of the best lands in the format. So Thoran Quarry is in there. We are in red-green, so we can run the one unique, the only card in this cycle, which there should be a full cycle of, but for some reason they haven't done it. Grove of the Burn Willows. This is the one that you give your opponent 1 life. We're going to be dealing so much damage that if we give our opponent 1 or 2 life, I don't think it's going to matter. Fixing our mana is going to be more important than the 1 or 2 life we may give our opponent. So we're going to run Grove of the Burn Willows. So we're up to 7 lands, and everything taps for every single color, so we're doing pretty good. What else do we want in terms of lands here? You know what we can run? We can run the Pathway. Now we're starting to diverge a little bit just because we're kind of running out of the lands that can tap from both. We want the one that's, it's Crag card, right? This is the red and green. So this is almost just as good. It's kind of, you know what I mean? It can tap for either. Now we're going to kind of need to start splitting into some utility lands. So we have 8 lands. So 8 of our 12 lands, 75% of our lands can tap for both colors. That's pretty good. Here's a land that can tap for both colors, but in a weird way. I really love this, and especially in any type of like aggro deck, this is really good. Hall of Oracles. It taps for colorless, one and a tap, and you can get any mana. But the big one is that bottom one. You can put a counter on a creature as long as you played an instant or sorcery. So if you play something like Scale Up, you can then like Hall of Oracles, or if you just decide to play something in your if 1 extra damage is all it's going to take, you play something in your main phase and then use Hall of Oracles to put an extra counter onto your cat, which is pretty fantastic. So Hall of Oracles is in there. And then we want to run, this is going to be unique to this deck, but I really like these because we're going to do something interesting here. Teetering Peaks. This is the card that when it comes into play, a creature gets +2/+0. So here's what I'm talking about with utility lands. This is now a pump spell is what this is. And then we're also going to run, I think it's called Smoldering Spires. Yes, when this comes into play, target creature can't block. So you use this to make it so your opponent can't block. So that's going to be good. Now, it's kind of weird that we're running these, and you're like, well, that's weird to have them and like not be able to have a way to get them. And that's because we're going to run Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation, we obviously cycle in and we get something. So now Crop Rotation is a pump spell. You can use it to fix your mana, or you can use it as a pump spell because you go and get to Teetering Peaks, or you use it to get your creature through and you get the Smoldering Spires. Both of those are absolutely fantastic plays in here. Okay, speaking of utility lands and things that are super interesting, check out this one. A couple people have picked up on this in the comment section. I didn't mention in the video, but this one, or maybe I did. I can't even remember anymore. Pendlehaven. This basically is a forest because it taps for green, and then target 1/1 gets +1/+2. Well, guess what? It's always 1/1. The 9 Lives Familiar. This sounds ridiculously broken. It's actually kind of not, because in a weird way, it's kind of costing you the mana to constantly pump. Hall of Oracles, in my mind, is actually better because it puts a permanent counter on it. But since we're in green, there's no reason not to run Pendlehaven. Like if you were in mono green, you'd also run Pendlehaven, simply because it's basically swapping in for a forest. So that works good. And that gets us to 12 lands. Like there we are. We are at 12 lands. We're at 34 cards. We have a bunch of pump spells. We have some permanent things that are going to make our cat bigger. So now we need a few other things to just kind of like keep the momentum going. Like do some more interesting things. Cards that are just good in this format or cards that are just super interesting. So let me show you a couple of cards that I like default go to in this format. Here's one that you may or may not know. It's Morbid, it's red, it costs 1 because everything costs 1, and it's not a creature, so we'll just hit those. Hunger of the Howl pack. This one's super interesting. You put a +1/+1 on target creature, but if any creature has died, you put 3 counters on it. So in a weird way, you can use this to give your cat a permanent +3/+3. This is really good. So we're going to add this. Hunger of the Howl pack. I know I'm saying that all we want to do is go super aggressive, but we might need a few ways to protect our cat just a little bit, just a couple of like defensive spells, but let's do defensive spells that are also going to protect our creature. So I'm thinking of Blossoming Defense. This is the one, it's a +2/+2, but your creature also gains hexproof. So this works really good. And then similar to Monstrous Rage, we had the new version of that, and that is, it's Royal Treatment, right? Royal Treatment. So where'd that one go? Royal Treatment. So target creature gets hexproof, and then create a roll token on it, which is +1/+1 and ward 1. So this is obviously super fantastic. And these are good examples of what, when I talk about this format, I say that every new set, you're going to get new cards that make this format better and better and better. And these are really good examples. Monstrous Rage is like the best example. This is the best version of this effect. And you're just going to keep getting power crafted versions of these. So this format just gets more better and more interesting as new sets get printed. Okay, here's an interesting one. I came across this one because I was actually looking for cards that are +2 or +3. And check out this card right here. I think it's Flustered Infusion, right? Let's look real fast. Yes, okay, so this is an instant. Open up. And it gives a creature +2/-2. So this does double duty. So as long as our cat has a higher toughness than 2, which with all these pump spells it most likely will, this is just going to make our cat bigger. But in a pinch, this is a removal spell because this is going to get rid of our opponent's cat. I really love this in here because it does that double duty. So that's an amazing include. And if we're doing pump spells, why not just go with the OG? You know what I mean? Let's just go with the Giant Growth. It's +3/+3. So if you're able to just resolve a Giant Growth when your creature has Menace, or if your creature has Trample, that's just an extra 3 damage. So one of the other rules in the format, which I didn't mention in the earlier part, but I mentioned in the video, direct damage dealt to you by your opponent is prevented. So that's why we're not running Lightning Bolt. So if you've been sitting here wondering, like, why am I not adding Shock and Lightning Bolt? You can't deal direct damage to your opponent. So you got to be able to deal it through combat damage or life loss, or they deal themselves damage with like Carplusion Forest and City of Brass. But but this is just going to be an extra +3/+3, which is super fantastic. All right, now we're at 39 cards. Let's get ourselves one more, and then let's build ourselves a sideboard. Okay, let's take a look here. Let me see if there's something that we're just not thinking of. Mana value equals 1. Not a creature. I should just have this saved. Is there anything that gives +4, like with like a weird stipulation for the family? Boom, here we go. Groundswell. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Landfall. If you had a land enter the battlefield, it gets +4/+4. This is amazing because you're most likely going to have a land enter the battlefield. So let's add this one. It was Groundswell, right? Groundswell. Bam! 40 cards. We got there. So we have just built an incredibly aggressive Catfight deck here, and I really love this one. I think this is super cool. Like, obviously it's fragile because if things are happening to our cats, it's going to be hard, but anything we top deck, it's going to be another threat. So we're just going to be able to keep going and going and going. We do have to worry about our cat getting tapped down, but we're going to solve that in our sideboard as best we can, because tapping down the cat and like permanently tapping it down, that's a blue effect. So let's do some sideboarding here. So 7-card sideboard is the rule. So we're going to run Red Elemental Blast. Yep. And then, of course, we're going to run Pyroblast. Now, both these are super fantastic because obviously our worst matchup is going to be mono blue. These are also great because they can hit the enchantments. So you can use these to hit the enchantments if they're tapped down, and then your creature will untap on the next untap step and you can swing in. So that seems good. Speaking of enchantments, there are some enchantments and some artifacts that are going to be problematic for us. So let's just get something that generically gets them. Oh, we put that into our main deck. At the sideboard, move to sideboard. If you don't know, if you go SB and then : then whatever you search for, when you add it, it's going to add it to your sideboard. That time I just didn't type that, so it didn't go in there. So we'll pick your poison. So sacrifice an artifact, sacrifice a creature. And if our opponent has a flying cat that we're having trouble dealing with, this is also good. I wish this was an instant. If it was an instant, I might even main deck it. As a sorcerer, though, it's going to kind of be more of like where we need it. All right, we're still working against our worst matchup here. We're going to add Guttural Response. So counter target blue instant spell. So that seems pretty good. This is going to be our second counter spell if need be. So that seems super good. And then let's do things to just continue to protect our cat a little bit more. So let's run it's Veil of Summer. I always get it like Veil of Summer and Autumn's Veil. In my mind, I always get them twisted between which one's which. And then it's Autumn's Veil, right? Autumn's Veil. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Man, that one is really falling off because obviously Summer's Veil is the better version. Okay. We got 6 cards in our sideboard. I mean, let's just run, speaking of veils, let's just run Snakeskin Veil. Another thing to give our creature protection, right? And it's going to put a counter on it. That seems really good. So that's going to give it hexproof. So if we're running against some type of like mono black deck that's just kind of running nothing but removal, we can side in Snakeskin Veil, Veil of Summer, and Autumn's Veil for some of these pump spells to have a more reliable way to try to keep our cat around and get it in there for damage. So there we go. We have a 7-card sideboard. We have a deck. It's 40 cards. Oh, we're one short. Okay, super important thing. I've messed up because I've seen other people do the same thing. We actually should be running 41 cards because the 9 Lives Familiar is not in your library. You should be having 41 on your Mox field because your deck is 40. The cat lives outside of the deck. So, and that's another one of the rules also is that you can't put the cat in the library for any reason. So you can honestly keep your cat in a different sleeve. I keep mine in a clear sleeve. But if you wanted to get like a fancy sleeve or something else, you could do that. Kind of like Commander. The cat can never go anywhere other than the battlefield, honestly. It hits the graveyard and then it's going to come out. But it doesn't actually like... it's in the graveyard, but it's in the graveyard only to come out later. So so it's always in play. So you know what I mean? It can never be in a not public information zone. So we have one more spot here. Let's run one more thing. I mean, we have these sideboard cards. Part of me wants to add that Snakeskin Veil. Let's see, what else came up when we looked at +4 here? Might of Old Croja. I mean, that's not terrible. Is there anything else that gives us Menace? Can't be a creature. Why did I click off non-creature? That was silly. I mean, this gives it the Menace, but not in the way that we want. Or what do I Intimidate? Does anything give our... Nope, can't give our creature Intimidate. I'm sure Fear doesn't exist. Damage can't be prevented this turn. It's kind of interesting as a sideboard card if you want to prevent some damage here. We got everything that was trample. We got everything that was... Okay, let's run like just a classic card that you probably don't even know about. Not a critique on your knowledge of this. Oh, I can't spell, that's why. This is one of the cards that... This is a card that you've probably never thought of, you've probably never seen, and you're probably looking at this being like, what is this man about to say? And this is actually one of the best cards in the format, and you're going to be like, what is happening?
Excellent.
Read this card real fast. It's this second block of text here. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to it. So if something happens to your cat, it comes back and this gets attached to it. So it gets +1/+1. So in a weird way, it's kind of like an Inventor's Axe, but you never have to pay to equip it. You never have to pay because something's going to happen to your cat. It's going to come back and you'll have a 2/2 cat. This is an incredibly reliable way to always have your cat be pumped. There's a strong argument that I should just run the red Giant Growth instead. There's a red Giant Growth, but I kind of want to run this because things are inevitably going to happen to my cat. I'm not going to be able to like permanently be able to stop it. So, and this is colorless, so I don't have to worry about like having to hit my mana quite as efficiently if I run this, I'm going to add this. There's an argument to say I should run the red giant growth instead, but let's add this to the deck instead. And then there we go. Now we have 41 cards in our deck instead. I mean, if that's the case, one of the things we could do if we want to is we could run the red giant growth in the sideboard if we're afraid that we just need to go like a touch faster. I mean, there's something to be said about that, but I kind of like this, and I kind of like this not here, because even though our mana is as best as it can be in terms of being able to tap for everything, we still have sometimes where like you're gonna have a Pendelhaven, and you know, you're going to want to be able to use that to play Sigh of Shinobi. And if this was the red giant growth, the Pendelhaven obviously can't help you cast that, but this can help you cast that. So I'm down with this. 41 cards, Sigh of Shinobi, we're going to run with instead. So there we go. We have ourselves a deck. It's going to be quick, it's going to be fast, it's going to be aggressive. This is a totally competitive deck. You could take this and you could run with this in any pod and with any other opponent, and this deck would hold its own. Like, I'm not saying this is the best deck in the format by any means, but this deck is a good deck for sure, and you could play this and you could have a blast doing it. Obviously, sideboard is super important. And one thing to note here is look at this price tag, $122, and most of this money is honestly in the lands. The Mental Misstep is obviously a little bit pricey, and then some of our sideboard cards are a little bit up there. The Pyroblast, the Red Elemental Blast, and the Veil of Summer. So without a sideboard, this would easily be under $100. And this, if you were to buy this from TCG Player and not get like all near mint, like foil versions, you would wind up getting a lot less. It would be even less than this. You could probably build this deck for like $75, to be totally honest. So that's another thing that makes this format great, is that this is a completely viable deck. This is a, honestly, this might even be a tier 1 deck. If not tier 1, tier 2 for sure. And it's $75, so that's one of the great things about this, and you can do incredibly well with this and have a blast. So now we have a deck that we can play with. It's not terribly expensive, it's going to be super aggressive, and we could play this against any other deck in the format, and we could hold our own fairly well. Some decks we'd obviously struggle against, like a blue-white control. We have a sideboard to try to deal with that, but we have something that we can play with, and we can compete with our friends and have a great time. You know what, before we leave, let's actually just do a playtest hand so you can kind of see how this works. In the future, we're actually going to wind up doing, I'm going to put together some playtest videos, some like demo videos of the format to give you a better idea of how this is working. Oh, nope. Get in there. How do I search? Search. View library. Where's my cat? This is the one problem with playing this on Moxfield, since it's not a real format, is that you have to go and you have to find your cat from the get-go. So meow, we have a cat. He's got his 8 counters. Add a counter. Set counters. How many counters should this card have? 8. Okay, cool. He's got his 8 counters. So there we go. We got ourselves a cat. All right. I don't know. Let's say we're on the play. So we're gonna play our land, and then we're gonna play Sticky Fingers. Enchant it. He's enchanted. Okay, obviously our opponent can't block, so we're going to obviously tap this. And then let's move to combat and tap and attack. And then we need to create a treasure token. Add token. Treasure. But cool. So we get ourselves a treasure token. I don't think we have a okay, if our opponent went to do something crazy, let's say they go to scale up, we Vitality Charm, and we create an insect that blocks. So goodbye that, goodbye this, goodbye token. We'll put this over here just in case we need another one, which we will. So untap on our turn, untap. Library, we drew a card. Okay. So our opponent tapped out because they played scale up. So let's us play scale up. Assume they don't have a mental misstep here. So we have our 6/4 cat coming in. We will tap. We will get a treasure token. And then our opponent has now taken 7. They've taken 7 damage, so they're at 2. We have a treasure token. Okay, cool. Let's say they do something to kill our cat. Let's say we get galvanic blasted or whatever. You know what? Let's say they go to play galvanic discharge. Are we going to sack this and save our cat? Do we want to do that? Yeah, let's say we do that. So then we have an untap blocker. So untap, Cool. We missed our land drop, but it doesn't matter because we're going to then get over here, cat. Untap, get on top. And then we'll move to combat, tap, and then we'll tap our land. And then once again, it's all relying on them having the mental misstep, but we'll massive might. And then boom, we would have won. Assuming our opponent didn't have a mental misstep somewhere in here, or they didn't have another removal spell. So, I mean, that was a fun game to me. And that's how the format goes. So I like it. So there we go. So there was just like a quick like goldfish right there if you kind of want to see how the deck played. So there, like, let me know what you think. As I said, let me know what you're brewing. Send me deck lists. Talk to me in the comments. Talk to me in the comments on here. Talk to me in the comments on the intro video. I want to see what you're brewing. I want to see what you're thinking. And as always, if you encounter anything that you think is just too busted that needs to be banned, or like a weird rules interaction, someone asked me how Not Dead After All would work in this format with the cat, and it actually would work because it doesn't break any of the rules. The cat is, it's not being exiled. You're not putting it into a non-public zone. You're not making it so it can't, it loses its abilities. But ironically, what you're doing is you're making your cat worse, because your cat's going to come back and it's not going to have the counters. If they ever printed a Not Dead After All that let you gain control of your opponent's cat, you couldn't do that because that would be in the same category as Reanimate. So you can't permanently gain control of your opponent's cat. So, but right now, if you want to Not Dead After All your own cat and lose all your counters, that's a totally acceptable thing that you can do. I mean, maybe you're doing something with calling the weak and sacrifice and bird offering and stuff like that. So you're just trying to ramp out as much mana as possible. That's a very interesting strategy, and that actually would work just great. So I think that's super cool. So go ahead and try that. So there you go. That's just another angle that you could do in this format. And that's what makes it interesting, is that you could play aggro, you could play control, you could even play mill. I've seen a couple mill decks. I've tried a mill deck. It actually works a little better than you think. You just need to run the fogs to like keep yourself from, getting the damage. But if you're running enough things that can like prevent the damage and recur your fogs, you can mill your opponent out. That's a perfectly viable strategy. The only thing you can't run is Infect, because you're pretty much already running Infect. But I mean, if Life Gain took off, you probably could run Infect if you really wanted to. So as I said, send me whatever you're thinking or whatever you're brewing. I'd love to see it. But here we go. Here is a Catfight deck built from beginning to end, and a quick little goldfish of a game there. So let me know what you think. Hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys build decks. Hope you guys play it. And I'll catch you later.